Week 8 was another one with a lot of weird stuff going on across it for NFL DFS. We had backup quarterbacks leading winning drives, leading wins across the board with Mike White, Trevor Siemian, Cooper Rush, all getting victories for their teams. We saw some flops for weird reasons, I guess. Talking about that Eagles versus Lions game. A lot of stuff to digest, specifically around quarterback injuries and more. We'll let you know the key injuries to know, what it means going forward, and some role changes to note for your NFL DFS lineups. Welcome on into the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire. That's right here on the FanDuel Podcast Network and numberFire.com. My name is Jim Sonis. I am a senior writer and analyst for numberFire.com. Joined here, as always, by Brandon Gadula. He is the managing editor for numberFire.com. Brandon, first of all, happy Halloween-ish. Past or All Saints Day, I guess now. Happy past Halloween to you. How was your Halloween?
Pretty uneventful from a Halloween perspective.
Did you dress up Benny and June?
No, you don't. You don't dress up either of those cats.
No.
Especially not June. Benny wouldn't. Benny would kind of let you do it, but he wouldn't really
Not
like
good
it.
about it. Yeah.
No. Also, not a whole dress up your pets kind of guy. But no, I mean for the actual day of Halloween, just it was Sunday, so watching a lot of football, and we live on a state road, so we don't get any trick or treaters or anything either.
Okay, well, that matters too, I guess. We only had one trick or treater. It was our dog, who refused to take candy. Good, because it's toxic, and wanted only hot dogs. So she was dressed as a hot dog as a result of her request for just hot dogs. As far as the football goes, I think to me this slate was a good reminder of why I value mistake erasers, because I made mistakes on Sunday. I had a lot of Jalen Hurts, and that wasn't a mistake. It just, I think that one, the process is fine. It just didn't go in my favor. DeAndre Swift, probably the same thing. I had like 62% DeAndre Swift. And when you have that with a lot of Jalen Hurts, Devontae Smith, and you can still find a way to like be okay, that to me says that like I chose guys who had the ability to make up for the fact that I had made mistakes elsewhere. So I think to me, it was a good reminder of why we value ceiling so much. I want guys who can bail me out, basically, when I do dumb things or have stuff go against me. I don't think that the DeAndre Swift or Jalen Hurts plays were dumb. They just kind of went against me. So I think that to me is a good reminder of the value of identifying upside in order to erase mistakes you make elsewhere. What about for you? What was the key takeaway for you?
I mean, so this is probably a little bit more kind of like you're saying in a way where it's maybe a little bit more personal, as opposed to like an overall slate takeaway, which will have plenty of like injury related and usage related takeaways. But for me, the Michael Pittman, AJ Brown stacks, very, very exposed to those. And it just reminded me because for the most part, this year so far has been forgettable. I won't say it's been like awful, but it definitely hasn't been like good for me. But whenever you actually have those guys in a substantial amount of your lineups and they hit, it's still not always going to work out because you're going to have DeAndre Swift in those lineups. So I've been trying to narrow my core and just be okay being more exposed to guys week after week. And it doesn't always work out, but it's just a good reminder that if your goal is to hit it big in a tournament, you can't just be shuffling around, 10 to 15% exposure for your guys, because you're just the odds that you hit on 7, 8, 9 of the players in your lineup, it just goes down so much. So I felt pretty kind of vindicated with going hard at certain players, being very, very heavy with my core for this week.
Right. And I think the good thing with them is they made a lot of sense from a process perspective. We want to target tight games. That was a tight game, high total, stuff like that. And it did play out that way. So I think that was, like you said, vindication is probably a pretty good word for it. It illustrated that like we're doing the right things. We just need to make sure things break in our favor. They happen to at times on Sunday, which is good. So hopefully we can carry that into week number 9. Okay, let's dive in here to the week 8 headlines. And the headline for this week is the quarterback injuries, because there were a lot of them. The first one was on Thursday night, and this one hopefully is pretty minor, but Kyler Murray sprained his ankle in that Thursday night loss to the Packers. Jay Glazer's called it a 1 to 3 week issue, and that wording doesn't make me feel great. Not a given that Kyler will play this week against the 49ers. DeAndre Hopkins in and out of the lineup consistently on Thursday with his hamstring injury. He ran just 8 total routes. So the problem here, Brandon, is that if Hopkins were to miss time, it'd open up usage. But if Murray misses time, I think it torpedoes everyone regardless. So what's your view of this Cardinals team based on where the injuries stand right now?
Yeah, so the 1 to 3 week thing it's not like day to day. It's like week to week. And I also saw a quote. I don't remember where exactly this came from, but it was basically like if it doesn't swell up, he should be able to play. But one of the reasons we love Kyler is that he can run the ball. He actually hasn't been running the ball like from a yardage standpoint very much over his past, I want to say 4 games, might be 3 games, but hasn't quite been there. He hasn't really needed it because the passing efficiency has been a big step up from what it was last year. But then again, like the reason you want to play Kyler at a premium and you're okay, rostering him at an extremely high salary is because he can give you 40 rushing yards and a touchdown as well and just kind of break open the slate. So if he's not 100% healthy, which if it's a 1 to 3 week issue, he can't be 100% healthy.
Right.
I'm going to have a hard time with, featuring him heavily. But you're right with the DeAndre Hopkins. Like it's a great situation for this team where you take DeAndre Hopkins off the field. And we talk about this all the time. That hurts the offense because he makes this team more efficient, but they still have other options that I would trust. So, if we still get Kyler without Nuke for week 9, week 9 already. Ideally the salaries for the other guys will still be a little bit lower. So I'd probably be kind of lighter on Kyler, but take advantage of any value that we might get.
Yeah, I think we just keep an eye on Kyler. I think that Nuke's probably going to play through because he was in there late in the game.
I did see that he wasn't supposed to be playing.
Oh yeah. Cliff was like, he was mad at him or something like that. Yeah, I saw that too. Yeah, I think that could be the good thing is if they kind of get the mini bye with the Thursday night stuff. So hopefully that gets Kyler healthy. But we'll keep an eye on that one because I think that one's kind of up in the air for right now. If you were to remove DeAndre Hopkins for a bit, it would obviously I think, like you said, we do care about losing high usage players because it does tend to lower efficiency. But when they're so deep as they are, I think it matters a bit less there. So we'll see how things play out there. But if Kyler can't go, that is a killer for that entire team and games. It would kill games for opposing teams too. Sam Darnold exited early with concussion. Sounds like they think he'll be able to play this week, but he wasn't playing well before that. PJ Walker came in with 7:37 left, threw just 1 pass attempt. Walker struggled in relief of Darnold last week. Darnold hasn't been good, but how would you view the Panthers if Darnold were to miss time? And again, it sounds like he's probably not going to miss any time here, based on what they seem to think.
Yeah, so I'm just down on them in general. I played some. We're going to talk about mistake erasers. I don't know what the opposite of an eraser is. Maybe like a Sharpie.
A mistake?
I think. Yeah, but I mean, Robbie Anderson was written in Sharpie as a mistake. So that hurt me this week. But this offense anyway for me is just DJ Moore, and his salary's been really high, which is fair for the role. But if you account for the offense and the efficiency, I think what this whole injury situation is good to talk about is just DJ Moore kind of being almost unplayable for me at unless his salary drops down into the low 7,000s.
Right. So, how would you view Moore if Darnold's good to go? Because this offense is in a very good spot on Sunday, and they still struggled quite a bit. I think we can cross off Robbie. That one, I had him too. But the good thing is the targets he was getting are now gone, which is, I think, a blessing. So Robbie's gone. Where are you at on DJ Moore if we assume Darnold's good to go?
So again, I'd say I'd play him at a salary of in the low 7,000s. And since I already said that, I feel like I kind of named my salary, but name a salary for DJ Moore. They host the Patriots next week.
That's not a fun game.
No. DJ Moore's probably the only playable asset in that entire game.
Yeah.
Maybe Hunter Henry if the salary's low enough and tight end's bad enough, but
okay, so let me pull up usages
10,
here.
11. So it's an 11-game main slate for some context. So
DJ Moore is at 30% still. It's not bad. I'd say 71, 72.
He's 71. So
yeah, okay, that's fair.
I think we can go there, but literally only one-offs because there's no other way to get exposure to that.
McCaffrey might be back this week.
That's I hadn't even thought about that.
Nice. That'd be nice.
So with Darnold playing the way he has, and we've discussed McCaffrey's positive impact on this offense, do you think McCaffrey's return would be enough to feel better about, like, not Darnold, because we're not going to play Darnold,
right?
Would it make you feel better about DJ Moore at that salary? Because I feel like it has to.
It wouldn't make me feel worse. I know that. Because like he was getting targets when McCaffrey was healthy. He had 8 and 11 targets in the 2 games McCaffrey played, the full games. So I think that he'd still be. I think honestly it'd be a wash, maybe a slight decrease in target share, but a bump in efficiency for the offense.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think that would make him worth it. And then for McCaffrey, if he goes,
depends on practice.
Okay.
Depends on practice. I need to see.
Feels like
how
when he's
hard
out,
he's going.
And
I
feels like whenever he's out
trust,
there, he gets
national beat reporters' thoughts on how hard he'll go.
Yeah, but I mean, it does seem like whenever he does play.
I think the one bad thing is that he's on IR, which means they don't have to listen to the practice reports. We're not going to know if he has a full practice Friday. And that I do value that info. So that's kind of a bummer for me. Let's move now to the Saints. Jameis Winston got hurt in the second quarter, and it sounds like it's probably going to be the full season. Trevor Siemian came in and put up 159 yards on 29 attempts, 0.05 passing net expected points per dropback with a 40% passing success rate, 6-yard ADOT. Deontay Harris led with 6 targets from Siemian. Adam Trautman and Marquez Callaway had 4. Alvin Kamara had 3. So I feel like we're going to have to plan around this offense with Siemian because Taysom Hill's still not back at practice from that concussion. Jameis probably done for the year. I love touchdown Trevor because he went to Northwestern. I don't want to talk about his like efficiency, but like at least he's experienced. We've seen him be somewhat competent in the past. So what's your thoughts on the Saints offense? Basically just what's your thoughts on Alvin Kamara under Trevor Siemian?
Yeah, I was going to say it's just Kamara. I will say that FanDuel Sportsbook has the Saints, and like we know this knowledge now, and I'm not saying the Falcons are a team to worry about, but they're still 5.5-point home favorites against the Falcons next week. The total is 43.5, but that gives the Saints an implied team total of 24.5.
Yeah.
So that's not like complete cross-off numbers for Kamara in such a good spot. So I don't remember really has there been a week where we were really on Kamara this season?
I was on him this week a little bit.
Okay.
For
but
game
like,
stacks mostly.
But like, yeah.
Like
but not
prioritizing him, I don't know.
Yeah, because it feels like we haven't. I can't really remember a time where maybe like week
such
1.
Bad games. Like that team stinks for DFS.
Yeah, but low total, tight-ish spread, but definitely favored. They should be playing, from ahead, have the more efficient offense. Is that enough where you think so? Okay, let's talk specifically for this matchup next week. Home against the Falcons, moderate home favorite. Name a salary for Alvin Kamara that you think is appropriate.
So he ran a couple fewer routes this week with Mark Ingram being there. I'm not saying it's a concern, but it got my attention. Like they could try to put him more in that like 2019-ish role, which is good. I mean, that's fine because if he gets targets, I don't care. He's not really, I don't really use him for the carries. I use him for the targets. And he's still getting those. So I would say like 8,600 is fair for me.
Yeah. I think he was 84 this week.
Yeah.
Again, I didn't really play him. So I'd say I wouldn't want to move it much. So I'd stick at 84.
Yeah, I think that's probably about right. He is $9,400. Wow. Okay. Didn't see that. That's pretty high for a backup quarterback. Again, all due respect to touchdown Trevor, long ball Siemian back in our collective conscience. Yeah. But that's pretty high.
So he's scored 1, 2, 3 straight games, had 2 in one game. In games without touchdowns, which I know is like, but you always have to account for 12
I want to know how
points.
many points they can get me with no touchdowns. I do value that info.
So yeah, 12 points against the Giants, 120 yards. That was when he got no targets.
So in the game with Simeon and with Mark Ingram, he had 76 total yards. That was with a really, really, really tough matchup. The Falcons are not that. So I would say if we're projecting yardage, he's probably going to wind up being in the 100-ish yard range, but I tend to want like 120 to allocate $9,400 or so. I can think of yardage in my, like, that's kind of what I'm looking for up there is yardage. 120-ish is kind of what I want for $9,400, and I don't think I'd quite get him there right now.
I could probably, with the matchup being
what I think I'll use him. I just can't prioritize him.
Yeah, and a week of prep. I'll say this. I would probably put him in the like core bucket, like the guys I would really consider if his salary was still 8,400. Yeah, at 9,400, unless the main slate is a lot worse than I would think it is with 11 games, he's not going to be a priority. Like he's not going to make it in the loves on Thursday's show most likely.
And I think the question is, do you use him over like Devontae at $9,000? No. Like I'd rather have Devontae against the Chiefs at 9,000 over Kamara at 94. I think that's kind of the way I want to think about it there. So it's a downgrade. He's oversalaried, but he's still a good fantasy piece, but a bit oversalaried for right now. Cooper Rush filled in for Dak Prescott last night. Looked pretty good. 3 for 325 yards and 2 touchdowns on 40 attempts. He had 0.12 passing net expected points per dropback, which is roughly league average. I'd expect Dak to start this upcoming week because sounds like he was pretty close, looked pretty good in warmups. They face Denver, but let's just say hypothetically, they're like, okay, we'll be decently favored against Denver. Let's give Dak another week. How would you view this Cowboys offense under Cooper Rush?
I mean, I liked what I saw overall. I wouldn't want to like forge ahead and say there's no downgrade, especially against a Denver defense that's solid. What's their
I didn't have time to log the bookmaker info.
They're not
doing that right now.
I think they have a total up right now on FanDuel Sportsbook, which makes sense. Not knowing or total or just
they played last night. They tend to post like the previous primetime games like mid afternoon or mid morning.
Plus with the uncertainty at quarterback. So yeah, I mean, I would be curious as to know, and we can find this out. But before I look, like if we're going to get a potential Cooper Rush discount on CeeDee Lamb, Amari Cooper, Zeke, which I wouldn't expect that we get because of the probability that Dak plays. So it's going to be very dependent on this offense. I wouldn't like cross it off from just a sheer offense standpoint, but given the matchup, I wouldn't particularly love it. So I kind of need to see a decrease in salaries there. Would you feel the same?
Yeah, if it were Rush, yeah, I think so. I think like it was encouraging, but like you don't project that going forward. It's not like the targets here are hyper concentrated. I know that Amari had really good usage last night, but like that's not the way they typically tend to play. So I wouldn't necessarily like expect that same concentration of usage to be in place once again in the next week. And I think that's kind of the key reason why I would need a decrease to feel good about them there.
And Lamb is 7,500. Amari's salary 6,900. Which
those are both very fair.
Yeah,
even with Cooper Rush, those are very fair numbers.
Yeah. So, and I mean, well, we'll talk about the Broncos in more detail, but
Gallup could be back this week.
Is that good? Like, we love Michael Gallup, but I just have market share concerns with this team.
So someone in the I'm changing the subject here because we have a new week 8 headliner. Mr. Monte on YouTube said Derrick Henry may have suffered a season-ending injury, and I pulled up NBC Sports Edge. Adam Schefter reports Derrick Henry may have suffered a season-ending foot injury in week 8 against the Colts. He played throughout that game, wasn't in an overtime. That's wild that he may be done for the year. So let's talk about that now. Let's talk about the Titans here with no prep. Derrick Henry, if we assume he misses time, we talk about Christian McCaffrey, his impact on the offense. This offense is built around Derrick Henry. The guys who would be filling in for him are Jeremy McNichols. Darrison Evans just went on IR, so he's done for the year. So it'd be Jeremy McNichols, Kari Blossingame, like their fullback might get some work, and then whoever they decide to bring in as well. Trade deadline's Tuesday, so they may bring in someone else as well. But how would this impact Ryan Tannehill, AJ Brown, if he's back, Julio Jones, if Derrick Henry does wind up missing time?
It's a lot to wrap my head around at 20 after 9 in the morning. Because you said he didn't play in overtime, but I'm pretty sure he was out there at least.
Well, he did. He was out for the first snap. He came up with the second snap.
Yeah, and got like stuffed on a carry. I think on the second play in overtime for them. I would probably have to say that, and we'll have to dig in to the efficiency numbers for sure, and not just assume. But typically, passing the ball is more efficient than running the ball. The Titans are one of the teams where they still run the ball efficiently, but you would just assume that the pass rate goes way up. Yep. And that would just make AJ Brown a very, very heavy core play until the salary gets exorbitant.
Right.
We would need Julio Jones to be healthier. This honestly feels like from a passing market share standpoint, this is going to make some sense, but it's going to feel like the Packers, where AJ Brown just might get the 35% target share and nobody else really gets anything noteworthy.
Yeah.
Again, the Packers have Aaron Jones, and if the Titans don't have Derrick Henry, that would be not the full comp. But from like a passing share standpoint, this team might just come down to like, can we stack Tannehill and AJ Brown this week? And if not, probably don't play them.
I don't think I can use Ryan Tannehill if Derrick Henry's not in there, honestly, which may sound weird, but like, so if you go to next gen stats, you can pull up on-off stats, and these are fluky because like they don't account for situation. They don't account for the fact that, Derrick Henry may have been off the field in garbage time where the team wasn't trying to push. But if we look at these situations where Derrick Henry is on the field this year, Ryan Tannehill's completion percentage over expectation is 1.7. Without him, it's minus 1.0. His EPA per dropback with Henry on is 0.18. With him off, it's negative 0.13. That is 0.31 difference with or without Derrick Henry. The passing success rate is 55.2% with him on, 41.8% with him off. So again, there are key context that's not included. There's key context not included in those numbers, but those numbers are terrifying. And I feel like it's going to downgrade Tannehill to the point where I can't use him because he was barely usable to begin with this year. Even if you bump up his pass rate, like, is it going to matter enough to nullify the loss in efficiency, which is why we use Ryan Tannehill to begin with. I agree that AJ Brown would get a bump up. The efficiency may come down, but like the efficiency goes, or the volume would go up because they'd probably pass more. And I think that's going to make things really, really tough here. So I think to me, it's a downgrade to everybody except for AJ Brown. And it probably makes Ryan Tannehill probably unusable, I think, for DFS. Which may sound weird, but I think that's the case here.
Yeah, I mean, if we consider Tannehill in the usable bucket to begin with, I would say he's out of it, but he was only borderline anyway.
I used him this past week. Yeah.
Yeah, in a game like this, It made sense. I guess a good question is, let's say, not knowing what happened this past week against the Colts, they play the Colts next week, same exact game situation. Derrick Henry's out. Are you considering Tannehill?
Probably not, no.
Okay.
I would use AJ Brown a lot, but I wouldn't use Tannehill, I don't think. I think it's that big of a downgrade for the offense, just with the way they operate.
It definitely is.
I know that, like we're data-driven people, we're supposed to like hate running backs, but like I can't. Like you watch McCaffrey play, like they make a difference. And that's a downgrade for the offense. Now let's talk about the backfield. I think that it's going to be tough to have a firm grasp on what to expect here. What I would expect is that Jeremy McNichols is probably going to play more snaps. And we've seen this year that they do covet McNichols from a passing game perspective. He played 23.5% of the snaps in week number 8. He played 16 total snaps. McNichols, as far as a usage perspective, didn't have any rush attempts. From a passing perspective, He ran 10 routes, 3 targets, 33 yards. He had a massive target game earlier on this year. So McNichols, they're probably going to bring in someone else to be like the passing game back. But we covet pass catchers in DFS. And I can tell you without a shadow of doubt that he will catch passes in this offense the way it's currently constructed. He is, if you go to player profiler, his best comp is Tevin Coleman, fast guy. Actually did get a lot of work at Boise State in college. So he's 5'9", 214, probably can handle early down work. So where are you at on Jeremy McNichols based on what we know right now?
So who do they play this week?
The Rams. That game just came off the board. I was wondering why that game was locked. I was on pulling numbers, and I was like, I mean, Tannehill's not hurt. Why is that game locked? But that was why.
Well, it's gone for me, which is why.
Yeah.
And I checked the bye week list, and they weren't on it, and I was very, very confused. But it makes sense. Right. So that's what, Sunday night?
No, that's on the main slate. Pretty sure, isn't it?
No, I think that's the Sunday night game.
Oh, you're right. Okay.
So, I mean, again, I can still analyze it, but it's going to be different because this game's not on the main slate. We won't get, we'll get news by the time that's the single game slate is posted, so we won't get McNichols at a screaming value.
Right.
So I think maybe we just contextualize this into a main slate conversation where if that game was on the main slate and Jeremy McNichols was going to be, Derrick Henry's out. We don't necessarily know that McNichols is the starter, but we assume he is. The question becomes what kind of salary is fair for his role, because you're usually a little bit more aggressive than I am whenever we get situations like this. So tell me what salary you would pay if this was on the main slate.
So he hasn't gotten any, he's gotten no more than 2 rush attempts the entire year. So I think we should, maybe it's like a JD McKissick type role. And for that, it's like $6,300 or so, I would say,
okay.
Maybe.
I was going to say low sixes,
yeah.
But you were speaking pretty glowingly, and I feel like sometimes, like a Chuba Hubbard for comes to mind, like you're a little bit more aggressive up in the 7+, and I didn't know if that's where you would put him. So I think that's good context to have.
No, I think early down work is up in the air. Yeah. I think they're probably they might trade for Marlon Mack, honestly.
Yeah.
I don't know if they do an interdivision trade, but there's going to be a change there. But that sucks. That sucks to lose Derrick Henry. Just as a football fan, that is a massive bummer. Hopefully he winds up being okay, but that is a brutal one for sure. Also sucking is Calvin Ridley. Going to miss some time here. He's stepping away from football for personal reasons. Just again, as a football fan, that stinks. As a human being, it stinks that that's the reason that he's taking time away, because you hope that he's okay. Looking at the Falcons offense here, in week 8 without Ridley, Kyle Pitts led the team with 28 routes run. Tajay Sharp and Hayden Hurst ran 20. Cordero Patterson and Mike Davis ran 13. So they didn't look good with no Calvin Ridley. They talked to Kyle Pitts after the game, and he said, I was seeing a lot of double coverage effectively as a result of no Calvin Ridley. We did see him go off in that London game when Ridley was out. So it's not as if he canter up. Patterson did the same thing because the usage is pretty concentrated. But how are you viewing this Titans offense if we assume that Ridley misses some time going forward? Yeah.
Down.
Yeah.
So I talked about Matt Ryan and his improvements against admittedly weak defenses, but he was throwing the ball downfield. Calvin Ridley is just one of the best downfield receivers in football, both from an efficiency and volume standpoint. They don't really have a whole lot who can replace him on that field stretching component. I know it's weird because he's their wide receiver 1, but he's a downfield guy too. You take that off the field, this offense gets less efficient. They can't push the ball as easily. They don't really have anyone who can take attention away from Kyle Pitts. We saw Tajay Sharp run a lot of routes. I don't think Tajay Sharp's really on the DFS radar. Just because we need guys who have that either run after the catch ability or the ability to get multiple downfield targets and convert on them. So maybe we see Cordero Patterson get more and more involved, and stay just extremely involved as a pass catcher. But I think this actually hurts Kyle Pitts from the standpoint that he was just talking about, where like he's probably gonna like he's really the only guy they got to take away from like a
because
intermediate and downfield standpoint.
Right, because Russell Gage ran 20 routes too for this team. Didn't get any targets. He had a long touchdown, but like he's not a deep threat by any means. Amade Zaccheaus like can kind of run, I guess, but like I'm not really worried about him downfield. So it really is a situation where you should expect teams to game plan around Kyle Pitts. So if you're asking me, would I rather have Kyle Pitts after what we saw last week with Calvin Ridley being healthy, or Kyle Pitts without Calvin Ridley? I would prefer him with Calvin Ridley, just because we saw he can get that good usage with Ridley there and get the freed up coverage too. So I would say it's a downgrade for the entire offense. What does this do for Patterson for you? Because we were warming to him. I used him a decent amount on Sunday. His snap rate went down a bit again, but like he was still fine. So what would this do for you with no Ridley?
So yeah, I have Patterson at 60% of the snaps according to Next Gen Stats, and Mike Davis at 64%. And I didn't see a lot of that game on Red Zone, so I'm sure they shared the field plenty if they both, played over 60% of the snaps. I kind of liked whenever he was a little bit more guaranteed to get rushing work and an elite red zone role. But you take Calvin Ridley off the field, the red zone chances go down because they're not going to have as many drives to get them into the red zone, this is probably like, again, if you're still new to like NFL DFS, maybe you're transitioning from season long, or you play like NBA and you're now getting back, like you're trying NFL just in the meantime, is a perfect example of how injuries don't necessarily generate value.
Right.
Like injuries kind of only generate value at running back, honestly. Everything else is kind of a downgrade.
Yeah. There are some times where it's wide receiver can help, but like
it's pretty minimal because we don't
never
always
with a Calvin Ridley type guy. Never, like that doesn't help. It's not an upgrade. And I think that's not the consensus view. I would say. Right. I think that we tend to deviate in that sense, but worse games are worse. Like that's what I would say. So I think that's tough for him. With Patterson, he did have the lone red zone chance on Sunday, which goes to your point of they won't get there as often because they only had one play. It was a target for Patterson. He scored. So I still feel like he'll play a lot in the red zone. He'll probably get some more targets, which is good. He's still running back eligible, getting wide receiver and running back usage. So I still think that's valuable. I would keep his salary around 73. I think that's probably about where he should be. What about you?
I'd say probably 7, because we see some question marks emerge in the upper 6s at running back. I feel like maybe that's a little bit more more appropriate.
He's 7,000 on the button, so I think that's about right. Not a prime target, but also not a cross off. So overall downgrade for this team with no Ridley. What about Pitts? Where you put him for a salary perspective?
That's got to go down too. He was 68. He led the slate in salary. He's not gonna drop a lot lower than like 65, which we thought he was a little bit undersalaried at 68. Right. So I'd say probably 65, 66.
He's 66. I think that's about right. I'd agree. Like, because Mike Gesicki was getting a lot of usage with not the best efficiency, which I think is kind of what we should expect out of Pitts. And he was 62. So I think that's, 66 about right. I think
because the difference there is Pitts is going to be their wide receiver 1. Effectively, Gesicki's still dealing with 2 other.
Right. Well, it was 1 at the time. I was basing it off of with no Parker.
Yeah. So
James Robinson left to the. Sorry, didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
No, I just mean like the Falcons' implied team total next week is 19 points.
Seems about right. Yeah. Bad game. James Robinson left with an ankle injury after just 8 snaps. So Carlos Hyde popped up and played 66% of the snaps. He had 9 of 11 running back carries. He also had 8 targets, which is pretty interesting. So that's interesting. How are you viewing Carlos Hyde if James Robinson misses time? And what does this do for your view of the rest of the Jaguars?
So there's always like a team, like a bad team that I target in DFS. I thought this was going to be the team for me this year, where it's like, well, they'll just try to let like Trevor Lawrence do some stuff, and they have Marvin Jones and like DJ Chark at the time, and LaVisca. But I don't feel confident in any of these Jaguars. I will note, and this is something I would have talked about later, but they've been throwing the ball at a higher rate. They've been top 5 the past 2 games in non-garbage time pass rate, which was up from like a mid-season at this point. Like mid-season, they were just basically running the ball. So I kind of want to get there, but I really can't, and I'm definitely not going to play Carlos Hyde in DFS. So
they face the Bills next week, so definitely not.
Oh,
That's really rough. So like they're throwing more, but they're throwing it to weird dudes. Like they threw 12 times to Jamal Agnew. Dan Arnold had 10 targets. Agnew turned his 12 targets into I think like 38 yards. Dan Arnold's not getting a lot of yardage. I think the biggest takeaway for me is like I have no incentive to use Laviska Shenault or Marvin Jones. I'm not really inclined to chase Jamal Agnew or Dan Arnold. What about you? Maybe Arnold. I guess he's a tight end, but
yeah, that's the thing. Is like, okay, so they're playing the Bills. They're at home. They're still 14-point underdogs.
Let me see what I have that as.
The implied team totals are 31.25 to 17.25 there. The Jaguars are easily the lowest implied team total on the main slate for next week. So what I meant by there's always a team that I kind of go to, I was hoping that like, hey, 14 points, they're going to have to throw. They've been throwing. It's Marvin Jones week. Like he's going to see 12 targets and we know Marvin Jones is good. They're not doing that with Marvin Jones. They're doing it with Jamal Agnew, and they're not doing it with Laviska Shenault. They're doing it with Dan Arnold. So like, you can't touch a running back as a 14-point underdog. So like,
no,
there's nothing here.
Nope. It's bad. Just avoid the Jags outside of maybe Dan Arnold, but not against the Bills. Another sad one, just a sad podcast. Robert Tonyan tore his ACL on Thursday night. We saw a lot of absences from the Packers pass catchers on Thursday. So it's hard to get firm takeaways because Devontae might be back. Alan Lazard should be. And it's hard to get a firm read on this, but they're facing the Chiefs next week. So how was Robert Tonyan's injury impacting your view of the Packers if we assume that Devontae and Marquez Valdez-Scantling are back?
Yeah, I mean, I mentioned it with the Titans. Like, this team is just Devontae, and then there's not enough else for DFS relevance on a main slate. Now, the caveat is that they play the Chiefs next week. I'm going to take more chances on someone like a Valdez-Scantling for sure. Mm-hmm. But I'm probably not going to get to the point where I play like heavy Randall Cobb even in this game. So I think it's probably just a downgrade. Robert Tonyan hasn't been like doing a ton or a ton, I suppose. But I mean, like maybe I'm too low on the secondary guys, but it really doesn't feel like this. It doesn't matter what happens with this team. Nobody's really guaranteed for anything above 15% aside from Devontae.
Right. So I think that like it's kind of a neutral move. Like it may give some additional targets to like Cobb, but like it's not enough to make him relevant. So I'd agree with that one. They're probably not using Mercedes Lewis or Josiah DeGuara, so I think I'd agree. Damian Williams left early for the Chicago Bears with a knee injury. Khalil Herbert also left, but came back pretty quickly. He had 23 carries for 72 yards, 2 targets on 21 routes. He played 84% of the snaps. Like Herbert, we had questions about whether or not he'd be like the guy until David Montgomery got back, as Williams missed time due to being on the COVID list. So it seems like now we're just getting confirmation that Khalil Herbert is going to be, like I said, the guy. They're not the main slate next week. They're facing the Pittsburgh Steelers on Monday night. So no Bears in the main slate, but I feel like this kind of locks in Herbert the way we had viewed him heading into last week, correct?
Yeah, 27 adjusted opportunities, which is carries plus double your targets. That's a really good roll. I kind of make like the cutoff 25 where I consider like, hey, that's a really, really strong roll and like something that I would be willing to bank on. 4 red zone carries, so 80% there. Justin Fields did start to run a lot. Like looks phenomenal running the ball. So like it's a bit of a concern, but I never get that worried about rushing quarterbacks until I see them just take every like goal line chance.
Yeah, I think there are no concerns there. We'll talk about the offense in general later on. I think there are lingering concerns there, but it's encouraging that Fields played well. I think that Herbert, we should project him to be just kind of like the guy and figure out what that's worth given the offense and its expectations. What?
Yeah, they play Monday night.
17-point implied total.
40.5 point total. That's
can we have Ben and Fields switch teams and give Ben to like Chase, or give Justin Fields to like Chase Claypool and Deontay Johnson and Najee Harris? Can we just have them swap?
Do we want okay, maybe
he's better than Ben.
Yes.
Okay.
But is Justin Fields helping his is Justin Fields not?
I'm not sure if it's a Justin Fields problem or if it's an offensive being too conservative problem, which could be because of him. Like maybe they don't trust him. But it's chicken or the egg.
Well, that or the pass catchers alone would Justin Fields support fantasy relevant receivers
if they let him throw as much as they let Ben throw? That's why I want the body swap. Let's just do the body swap. Don't tell them they body swaps. Don't like them. Hey, it's still Ben, still this veteran. But then all of a sudden, oh wow, he's got a rocket. Oh,
I don't think I could pinpoint two quarterback rushes that stand out more to me from yesterday of Ben trying to run in a 2-point conversion and Justin Fields with his miraculous rushing touchdown.
That's why I want the body swap. Out. Just don't tell anyone. Let's not tell anybody. Just see how
imagine
long it takes
Ben,
to notice.
Imagine current day Ben making that Justin Fields play.
I can. It'd be very easy. I think it's realistic. I'm not sure why this is a talking point. It seems very realistic to me. Jalen Reagor left with an ankle injury for the Eagles. We didn't get to see how this would play out because the Eagles didn't have to throw because they just throttled the Lions. Reagor was getting a couple targets per game. And I think that's narrowing the target tree any here. You got the Zach Ertz trade. You've got the Reagor injury. That's probably a positive for Dallas Goedert and Devontae Smith because when they get ahead, they want to run. And we know that for sure. So I feel like, to me, if I can feel better about Goddard and Devontae, I'll take it, but it's still hard to feel super secure about this offense given the way the multiple paths of failure they have now. What do you think you do with this Eagles team here?
Yeah, I mean, it helps. This is one that I noticed this injury and I was like, is it relevant enough to discuss? But I think the real takeaway is taking anyone off the field here at least helps because we want to play Dallas Goedert, or at least I do. I want to play Devontae Smith.
Yeah.
So reducing even 2 to 4 targets can go a long way from a market share standpoint. Goddard had 7 targets. He's had a good role without Zach Ertz. I feel strong there. But this is kind of a 3-player team, and it's really 2 if you give. Well, Goddard's more than a half, I think, at tight end because tight end's pretty rough. So I'd say it's about a 2.5 player team with Hurts, Goddard, and Smith.
Why is their implied total 24 points against the Chargers?
What should it be?
22, 21, 21 and a half.
They just put up 1,000 points against the
Lions.
Lions, yeah.
Yes. That's weird. Let's actually just loop the running backs into here too, since we're talking about the Eagles. If we must. So with Miles Sanders out, the Eagles used a full-on committee. Boston Scott got most of the early work before that game got out of hand. He had a 44% snap rate, 12 carries, 1 target. He had 3 red zone carries. Kenneth Gainwell played almost exclusively garbage time. He had 12 carries, 7 red zone carries. It didn't matter. He was an afterthought. Jordan Howard got 7 red zone carries with a 24% snap rate. So I think it's really Scott and Howard for right now. I don't think Gainwell's even in the picture at this point. But I feel like I don't want to target either of them anyway. What about you?
Yeah. I think you said Gainwell had 7 red zone carries. You meant
I meant Howard had 2.
Yeah, he had 2.
Yeah.
Which
Howard had 7.
Yeah, I think the only thing standing in the way of Kenneth Gainwell from being super fantasy relevant is having Miles Sanders back out there.
Or getting Nick Sirianni Thanos snapped. I think that's the other potential route. That could be a thing. I don't know if there's a Thanos event happening at any point in the near future, but that might help him too. I don't know.
So yeah, so here are some things I think we can say with confidence. You and I both loved this game as a secondary option behind Colts Titans.
It wound up being almost a primary for me.
Yeah.
It was pretty close.
So we like this game a lot. But even with Gainwell ostensibly taking over a much bigger role, we weren't quite there with him from a value standpoint. We liked a few others more than him, specifically Eli Mitchell.
Yeah.
This isn't like a victory lap thing, but it's always important to remember that you're not guaranteed that a running back in a situation where there is an opening will take that role or a bigger role. You don't always know how it's going to work. And so unless a team is literally telling us that they're going to do it or has shown us that this guy, like, hey, he's been playing 45% of the snaps consistently, it only makes, like, if Aaron Jones were to get hurt, we pretty much know that AJ Dillon is going to take over a huge role.
Right.
You got to like be a little bit cautious sometimes with these situations. So
yep.
And
we talked about that on Monday too.
Yeah.
Like, hey, Jordan Howard's probably going to get called up and probably going to get goal line carries, and he did.
Yeah.
So, yeah, they're a cross off. Rob Gronkowski left early with back spasms. In week 8, we saw only Chris Godwin and Mike Evans run at least 60% of the team's routes. They were at 93% or higher. Cameron Brate ran 57%. He had 4 targets and a red zone target. Tyler Johnson ran 59% of the team's routes, had 6 targets there. Antonio Brown was on crutches last week. So seems like he's probably going to miss at least week number 9 as well. Let's say we get the Buccaneers without Gronk, without Antonio Brown once again for what would effectively be the 3rd game this year. They are on bye. So I was going to set up the matchup. They don't have a matchup. But, what's your view of this offense if we whittle down the target tree a bit?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing is, like, we know Evans and Godwin are in play. Are we high enough on Brate and Johnson that they would be playable?
I used Tyler Johnson yesterday because he was $4,900 in access to a game I liked, and there were no value receivers. Did I feel like that was good process? No, it was fine, but it wasn't good process. Like, the results were okay, but it was not good process.
Yeah. So probably still just the Evans and Godwin. Also, I didn't look at, because I ended up not playing a whole lot of Leonard Fournette. He had a costly, I guess, near fumble that got overturned.
Yeah, he was back in the next drive. I was looking for that too because I was kind of worried because I love Homecoming Lenny was his name this past week. He still had a fine role, so I have no concerns yet.
60% snap rate, 48% route rate, 5 targets.
Same role.
8, yeah, so no change for you at all?
Nope.
Okay.
Good to go. They think they trust him. So
right.
I think we're all set there. Let's talk about some role changes here. Talk about Michael Carter taking over the Jets backfield. He played 71% of the snaps, even Ty Johnson being healthy for this game. I was skeptical about buying into Carter because his big usage came when Johnson was being checked for a concussion last week. This week, Johnson was there. Carter had 15 carries and 14 targets because Mike White loves him a check down. So where are we at with Michael Carter right now, assuming he will be like the lead back for this Jets team?
So I run simulations, and Michael Carter kept popping up as like in a kind of like the best value back. And I was like, no, I'm not doing it. And I'm kicking myself a little bit, but
I think that was okay.
Yeah, I do too. Now, I'll jump ahead to a note that I have in philosophy changes. The Jets were the 8th fastest team so far in week 8, if you exclude garbage time, which I consider plays where your pre-snap win probability was below 20% or above 80%. Since their bye, we have 2 games there. They've been 10th and 8th. Prior to that, they hadn't been top 20 in pace. So this could be a little bit of a thing to monitor because the Jets, while not a team stacked with options, they could help games be a little bit more fantasy viable. And I was looking for like the Jaguars this season as like maybe a potential run back situation. If we can get a sort of a value running back with the potential to get, I'll say potential to get double digit targets, but more realistically 6, 7, 8 targets and play a majority of the snaps, even in a bad offense, that can be enough to bring it back sometimes. So I think with the pace increase and with the role being what it is, even considering they're always going to have low offensive expectations, I'm definitely not low on Michael Carter.
I think I'm not low either, but I wouldn't be shocked if I'm lower than others because people love Michael Carter, and it's hard for me to get super jazzed about someone on a team like that. So I think that's kind of the hang up that I have is I think people are going to like him a lot. And because he's a value back, et cetera, et cetera. He's not on the main slate this week, but I think that an appropriate salary for him, if he were on the main slate, would be like 67 or so. I don't know. That might be too high, honestly, but
no, I think it's realistic because it's such a good role that you can't really explain away too much of it. So
yeah.
So they're what, the Thursday game?
Yeah.
Against the Colts. That'll be a fun one to break down.
Also, they did post the Rams Titans line. It is 7.5 points in favor of the Rams. If I put in a downgrade for Derrick Henry in my numbers, I've got a 9.2 in favor of the Rams. So that's not enough where I'm like leaping to bet it because there's a lot of variance in like putting in that number and trying to guess what their efficiency will be without him. But like, I think 7.5 might be light in terms of the spread for that game with no Henry. So that kind of illustrates the downgrade I'm seeing with no Derrick Henry. Antonio Gibson didn't officially suffer an injury, but weird usage. He actually practiced more this week than he did previously, but his role was awful. Jared Patterson actually outcarried him 11-8, and it wasn't like a late game thing because Patterson actually led in first half carries 6-5. Antonio Gibson, J.D. McKissic still had the third down role. So we can just cross off this backfield and never consider Antonio Gibson again until things change, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. Dolphins, Devontae Parker came back. And he and Jalen Waddle absolutely dominated the targets for this team. Waddle had 12 targets, Parker had 11. Mike Gesicki had just 4. Waddle had 2 deep targets, while Parker and Gesicki had 1 each. Waddle also had 3 red zone targets. So Waddle had a lot of targets and a lot of high leverage targets. He didn't do a lot with it, though. I think he had 38 total yards, didn't do much with it, whereas Parker was productive. He had a really bad drop, which made me shout things at my TV. But I think that like we can feel good about Parker and Waddle in this offense, given the target shares that I'd expect them to get. So where are you at on Devontae Parker, Jalen Waddle, and Mike Gesicki right now?
Yeah, Waddle had 29 yards on 12 targets, which
is great.
Not great.
Whereas Parker had 85.
Yeah, if you weight the targets, which I do, for downfield work and red zone work, I have Waddle getting the equivalent of 15.3 targets in terms of expected fantasy points. Parker at 11.8, Gesicki at 5.4. I am totally fine having Waddle as the sort of the 1A from a workload standpoint, but you do want to make sure that production is there. So I would probably have a lot of coin flip situations. I do have Parker, though. Despite the discrepancy in weighted targets, my expected fantasy points model includes things like catchable targets. So maybe that had something to do with Waddle's inefficiency, too. I have Parker rating out a little bit better there. So either way, 1A, 1B situation, probably going to be a spot where if I like both, I will kind of have to hope that their salaries are similar and duplicate lineups and just play the same lineup with the other guy.
Yeah.
So what kind of salaries are you thinking for these receivers right now?
I would say 63-ish for both, probably.
Okay,
around there.
So
I'd feel better about Parker at 63 than Waddle at 63 personally.
Waddle 61,
Parker
62. So yeah, I think that's totally viable, especially against the Texans.
If we get Tyrod Taylor back, that's not a terrible game.
Brandon Cook 68, man,
that's a lot.
I was gonna say if we get like the double low 6,000, like Cooks Parker, Cooks Waddle, like mini stacks, that would open up so much. But unfortunately, we don't get that.
Go Dolphins, baby.
What about Gesicki? He's in the salary for Gesicki. I saw it too.
Okay. He's 65. That's high. Even for tight end, that's high. That's what I'd say.
Yeah.
Like if I were to stack that game, I'd include him in the game stacks. But like, am I realistically going to stack that game? Probably not. So,
And just while we're here, Myles Gaskin, 60% snap rate, 20 adjusted opportunities. I want to like it, but I don't think there's quite enough there.
I think the issue is that in that game against Houston, they could run more, which would mean more Savon Ahmed because he's more of like the early down guy. And he's not like the early down guy, but like that's where he's going to eat into Gaskin's workload more versus the passing game. So I'd have trouble being super high on Gaskin. I'd expect him to probably catch some popularity this week. I don't know if that's necessarily the wisest thing.
He'll probably be adored by the like point per dollar optimizers.
Yeah.
I will say this though. I wouldn't cross him off yet.
No, I wouldn't cross him off, but
so the salary scroll will be really telling, I think, at running back.
I agree. Zack Moss ran 22 routes compared to Devin Singletary's 8 in that same game. Moss had 7 targets. Singletary had 1. Entering the week, they were about even in routes run in games they both played. But Moss separating there. Moss actually has 4 targets in now 3 straight games. And like we saw this in the playoff game last year too, before he broke his leg. He was getting a lot of passing game work. And I think that if you want a back in this backfield to become DFS relevant, that's what you want. You know, you get that passing game work. And Zack Moss, I think this is entering the game, but he had played 75% of the team snaps inside the red zone over the previous 4 games. So Moss potentially pulling away a bit as the 1A. He set a season high in adjusted opportunities with 22, which is not a good number, but like in this offense, it carries a bit more weight. He gets red zone work. He had 4 out of 10 chances inside the red zone this past week. Name that salary for Zack Moss against the Jaguars.
This is really tough because I'm going to have a lot of prior biases against Zack Moss. And I got to adjust for the so it's like a fine role, but in a great offense. So it almost feels like always trying to value like Clyde Edwards-Helaire, where there are Edwards-Helaire, like historically, not this year, it'd be Darrell Williams, but the receiving at least is a little bit. This one could range, but I would probably say like 67.
I was thinking 65, honestly. So we're about on the same page. He's 6,000 though. Like with that passing game role and that red zone role, I might write down Zack Moss.
Yeah, we do. We can't forget that they're 14-point favorites.
Yeah.
Which for a lot of people is like the checklist of a running back.
Yeah.
But they're still going to throw the ball a ton.
Right. But I think I trust this team more in a positive script than most. I think the Bucs and the Bills are the 2 teams I trust the most in a hyper positive script.
Yes, but you still want they can
to
throw
get
the ball.
Targets. You want a closer game. Yeah, you're right. Sorry, so it took me a while to pick up. You're right. I still like it though.
I like it, but I will say this: whenever you told me that, my first instinct wasn't like, let's lock them in, and yours wasn't. You said you might write them down. So like, I think for a lot of people. People
don't like Zack Moss. They don't like to use him. I don't think that's my
people do seem to like Devlin.
No, people don't like using the Bills backfield at all. Like it's like, they don't run. Who cares? And I'm like, I don't care if they run. They can pass the entire game if they want.
So yeah, I'll say this though. If we took out that bias of people don't really like this backfield, I feel like they'll still catch some popularity. Like Moss will catch some popularity.
Potentially, yeah. I think that's okay. They're a pass of failure. Definite pass of failure. I mean, he didn't do much this week even, but
do we have any like written down?
I did write down Moss's name, but it's not in pen. It's in digital ink. But like
so even with all these injuries, like no, maybe it's just because I haven't written like.
I mean, there's a lot of uncertainty still. That's probably why.
I guess, yeah.
And a lot of the injuries are not in the main slate. Like the McNichols one's not in the main slate. Herbert's not in the main slate. So I think that's probably the main catalyst here. And the quarterback injuries hurt everyone. So let's move now to the 49ers. Brandon Nyuk maybe like peeking out of the doghouse. He actually led the team in routes run at 26. He had 7 targets for 45 yards. He had a downfield target and a red zone target. In the 3 games since his role improved and George Kittle has missed, he has a 78% route rate, 15% target share. So like it's like getting better. The problem is Kittle's probably back now. I think that he's due to be back this week. this upcoming week, I believe. I could be wrong on that. But where are you at in Brandon Nyuk for right now?
That's
AKA Deebo Samuel's little brother.
Yeah. We can talk Deebo too. I think Kittle is eligible to be back this week.
Yeah, I hope so. I love Kittle.
Head coach Kyle Shanahan said Wednesday that he expects Kittle to return for Week 9 against the Cardinals.
Good.
Okay, so I was even gonna say, regardless of this, it's not enough for me to go to Ayuk because it seems like he's on the razor's edge of relevance and just going back to being completely not relevant. Yeah. So I'm not there with Ayuk. I think we can probably talk Mitchell, Deebo, and Kittle.
I think Mitchell was exactly what we thought he was, which is good. I mean, I thought that he was fine. He again wasn't getting a lot of work in the passing game, but he got all the early down work. And like in this offense, that's pretty valuable because like I don't know, you can tell what a team wants to do when they can, and it seems like they want to run the ball with Eli Mitchell. I think that's pretty valuable. So I would say with status quo for him, I would say $6,500 is an appropriate salary for Mitchell. Deebo is the best receiver on the planet. He's breaking Jerry Rice's team records. He's at 150 yards 3 times this year, which is weird because he isn't getting downfield work. So it's weird how he can get that far.
This whole thing originated from my saying that even with the downfield work, he gets a lot of like those bunny targets, and it makes his ADOT not as good as it could be. So it makes his ceiling really hard to project because I use total air yards as a range of outcome, as part of my range of outcome simulations. So while Deebo gets downfield work, he got 3 downfield targets and his ADOT was shy of 10 yards this week. Both of those he can get downfield work and he can get a lot of targets that we typically don't value a ton. Now, Deebo he showed us he's capable of taking a -4 air yards target, 83 yards, almost to the house. I get that he can do that, but it just feels a little bit weird that we like those targets for him, but not a lot of other players.
Well, it's different because if they're only getting those targets, it's one thing. If they're getting those targets as supplements to other work, I'll take it.
Yes.
That's the difference.
And I agree with you with Deebo, but all I'm saying is like he's a nightmare to project from a ceiling standpoint.
Oh, yeah. That's fine. Yeah.
Which is that's the
yeah. Anyway,
I feel like the LSU guy right now. Like, okay.
Forgot. Yeah, there was like this clip of LSU like radio hosts like yelling at each other. They kind of agreed with each other.
Yeah.
Anyway, name that side for Eli Mitchell.
I mean, he's still got. So they play the Cardinals, right?
Yeah.
I mean, they're 2.5 point underdogs.
Yeah, they're at home, which helps.
So we know they'll probably still run the ball plenty, even if they're trailing a bit. But if that game gets a little bit out of hand, then we got to worry because Mitchell, no targets the past 2 games, despite, I guess, 27 total routes over those 2 games.
13 this week. Yeah.
13 this week, 14 last week, 18 carries both games. They're a positive failure there if that game gets out of hand. So I need to keep that in mind. I would probably say like I couldn't go much higher than 65.
That's what I think too. I think 65 is right, and he is $7,100. Ah, how dare you?
I get it.
I do too.
I simultaneously don't think that's a bad salary, but also probably will be light on him for next week. So
last week I was talking about how Eli Mitchell is Damien Harris if he were favored and at a lower salary. But now Eli Mitchell's at the higher salary and an underdog, whereas Damian Harris is are they favored? Yeah, they're 3-point favorites. That flipped real fast. So do I now have to like Damian Harris and hate Eli Mitchell? Do I have to betray my son, who was so good to me this past week? Do I have to like stab him in the back like this?
I don't think you have to hate him if we like this game to stack, because he's still going to be part of. If that game is going to score points, like he's going to be relevant to some degree. The only way that he's not relevant is if you say the Cardinals are going to floor them from the get-go, and Eli Mitchell is going to run his 12, 13 routes and not see a target. Kittle's back too, so probably makes it even harder for him to
increase his efficiency.
Targets. Sure, but not that he's getting targets anyway, but you'd think he gets even fewer.
Would you rather Damien Harris against the Panthers or Eli Mitchell against the Cardinals? Assuming Kyler plays.
Well, what's Harris's salary?
$6,600. Well, let's just say no salary. No salary. Okay. Just straight up.
Boy, that's tough.
Yeah.
Because I don't like Damian Harris from a DFS standpoint, but he just jogs out there in the red zone, and I feel terrified that he's just going to walk in a touchdown. So I'd probably lean Harris by like a tinge.
I would too. And I'm also not a Harris guy. His red zone roll this week is actually the best it's been all year. He had 9 out of 17 opportunities there, whereas he had not been above 50% the entire year previously. He's had 100 plus yards, 3 separate times. I think it's Harris over Mitchell in a vacuum, but you give him to me at $500 discount, I'll take it for sure.
Yeah. I
might not get there either, but I think that like it illustrates to me that Eli Mitchell's over salary now.
He is. I don't like to play any running backs who play 50% of snaps, which is what Harris gets.
Yeah.
And is not a receiving back. It just feels like the wrong process.
Yeah. So we'll see, but I think I'd prefer more Mitchell right now. Yeah. Nick Chubb played 55% of the Browns snaps in their first game with no Kareem Hunt with Chubb, which says that like it's still going to be a split backfield. Chubb had 16 carries and a target. Baker Mayfield wasn't great. I think he's fine if you adjust him on a curve for the matchup and the shoulder injury, but that doesn't really matter for DFS. We can't really grade him on a curve. We have to do it straight up. Negative 0.02 passing net expected points per dropback. The lone bright spot here was that Jarvis Landry had 10 targets. 3 of those were downfield. That was the first game with Jarvis, Odell, and Baker all playing. So Jarvis had good usage. Name that sire for Nick Chubb right now, and are you willing to use Jarvis Landry?
So Nick Chubb, I mean, you and I would say always are under what
Damian
his actual
Harris, Nick Chubb, or Eli Mitchell. Give me one.
I mean, 50. So Harris played 53% of snaps. Chubb played 55%. Like
they each get 1 or 0 targets per game.
Like Chubb is, and I know people like who watch film say this, but I also kind of know enough. Like I watch enough football to say like Nick Chubb seems like he's one of the 3 best running backs in football, but
yeah, he's awesome. He's a great runner.
So like that part's different with Harris. Role wise, not a whole lot is different. Offense wise, like I think Baker is at times a very capable quarterback, but also at times not. So a salary for Nick Chubb. So they are underdogs to the Bengals next week. I feel like he'll still be like 76, but I would put him in like the 71 bucket.
I would agree. I would put him there as well. He's 76, so whatever.
Like they'll just never make Nick Chubb like 71. Yeah. I don't think.
Well, I mean, like I get why, but like,
yeah,
I just don't tease him. Jerry Jeudy returned, played a full complement of snaps. Super spread out targets here though. So nobody had fewer than 3 targets, and nobody had more than 4. There were 7 guys, all got either 3 or 4 targets. That's stupid. So this passing offense is not good right now. They're spreading out targets. I like Jerry Jeudy and Courtland Sutton from a talent perspective. The environment they're in right now ain't great. Where are you feeling about this Denver Broncos passing offense right now?
I liked Jeudy this week. He was one of my loves. Did not work out. I love Courtland Sutton as a player. Did not work out. I was actually going to say, hey, they're playing because we were talking about the Cowboys and CeeDee Lamb and Amari Cooper, and I accidentally pulled up just that game and looked at receivers. So I saw Courtland Sutton and Jerry Jeudy. I saw Judy's 5,800. Sutton's salary is 6,700. So
if we get Dak, that puts them in a negative script. They're indoors. They're against an aggressive defense that can make mistakes. Trayvon Diggs got banged up at the end of the game last night too. Mm-hmm. So I think I could use Jeudy at 58, but would I write him down, feel great about it? No.
And I should, they should, like he should have he should get more targets than what he got.
You'd think. But I don't know.
A downfield
I assume
target
long run he will, but
Yeah.
it's still not a guarantee.
So I'll say this. I don't feel good enough about Cortland Sutton to play him at 6,700 in those stacks. I would play Jerry Jeudy in those stacks still, at least.
Where do you rank Jeudy at 58 relative to other receivers in the 5,000 range this past week? Because I feel like he'd be better than all those options that we had this past week in the 5,000 range.
He would. That's why he was 6,000. That's why I just named him as a love.
Right.
But yeah, like the Robbie Anderson's and this isn't even hindsight bias. I didn't like him enough to like make him a love. Van Jefferson was down there. I can't even remember. It was a kind of a blackout of my memory. Weak at value receiver. So I would still say Jeudy number one. And if this week is anything like receiver value, which we'll find out in a second, Judy's going to still stand out there.
I'd agree. So let's go to situations to monitor. What else stood out to you from a usage perspective this week?
I don't have a ton. A lot of what I would have noted was a little bit more significant. And I have some pace numbers, but Pat Freiermuth, because we're always looking for tight ends, led the Steelers with 7 targets without Eric Ebron. Tommy Sweeney, 29 routes, 4 targets for the Bills. So still kind of relevant there. I want to keep an eye on the Jets because of some of the things we talked about. And Denzel Mims led the team with 40 routes, had just 3 targets for 30 yards, but I like him as a prospect a lot. So I want to keep an eye there. He also dropped a touchdown. So could have been solid. And you give me a lead receiver, at least on a team that is they're always going to have to throw. And if they're throwing the ball now, that's kind of noteworthy.
I feel like once Corey Davis is back, he's done though.
Sure.
Because he doesn't play special teams, so they don't make him active. And I think that'd be tough.
Is Davis going to be back?
I don't know. Maybe not. So
that's a situation to monitor. And
thankfully they play Thursday and not in the main slate.
And then Rondale Moore, 71% of the Cardinals routes with D-Hop banged up. So
pretty good.
Probably the most noteworthy of the sort of minor things. What about you?
Yeah, I think that the Hopkins or the Moore one is interesting if we get no Hopkins this week. I think it's noteworthy that Jonathan Taylor's snap rate was a season high at 78%. He had set a new season high in snap rate in 3 straight games. The yardage upside is always high. His red zone role is disgusting. The one question that we've had historically has been snap rate, whether he stays out there in a negative script. The negative script one is still there. That's still an unknown because I don't know where he'd be there. It may be Nyheim Hines, but the snap rate, not as much of a question. So I do want to ask you about this one. Where are you at of Jonathan Taylor with the snap rate increasing?
Higher. Taylor is one of the few backs who is historically a bane of mine just because doesn't quite fit the process and you're almost banking on the team to get into the red zone, which they're going to do. Virtually every team gets into the red zone. And we know that once they're there, they're going to use Taylor, but you're kind of banking on some bigger plays from a guy who doesn't play a whole bunch of snaps, doesn't necessarily factor in always as a receiving threat, but who can take a few targets and take them to the house. So I'm a lot higher on Jonathan Taylor. And I kind of want to make that context clear because historically I've been a little bit low on Taylor.
Yeah.
I feel like he's got one of the best workloads in football now. So I've really changed my perception on him.
Agreed. The Rams, we got 3 games now with either little or no Deshaun Jackson. And in those games, Cooper Kupp has 32% of the overall targets, 36% deep, and 35% in the red zone. He's stupid. But the other guys are more noteworthy here. Robert Woods at 23% in those games, Van Jefferson 15%, Tyler Higbee 13%. So that could make you say, hey, it's just Robert Woods. But Jefferson actually is tied with Kupp for the team lead in deep targets in those games. He's at 36%. So we're going to rank Robert Woods above Van Jefferson, but I think that the deep work combined with Matthew Stafford's efficiency and with how good this team is right now makes Van Jefferson very, 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 very playable in DFS, even on larger slates. Do you agree with that sentiment?
Yeah, I had some sprinkles of him this week. There was enough there. This was encouraging. He did get a little bit dinged up.
He still ran almost every route.
Yeah, we'll have to monitor his health, but if he's good to go, absolutely. They're not on the main slate, so I don't have salaries, but would still rank Woods above Jefferson, but assuming a similar salary gap as to what they have, I'd put Jefferson over Woods
Fully
at
agree.
salary.
Let's use the good player. Tyler Lockett finally got work with Geno Smith. He had 13 targets out of 22 targeted throws. If we look at the 3 games with Geno starting, Lockett is at 7.7 targets per game with 2.3 deep. DK Metcalf is at 6 targets per game with 1 deep. I don't want to analyze this one too much. I almost said analyze. That's not a word. I don't want to analyze this too much because it's not like Russ is back next week, but just worth noting that Lockett getting more targets. We can talk more about that if Geno winds up starting once again. Actually, they're on bye, so doesn't matter. That's nice. Let's talk about philosophical changes here. I had one I want to note. That was the Bears. It's not a change. It's noteworthy that it was a lack of a change because Justin Fields made that sicko play on Sunday, but the offense is still crazy conservative. They had 9 passes and early downs in the first half compared to 18 rushes. So it was encouraging for Fields to see him play well. But I would not view this passing offense as being desirable yet, just because they're still very run heavy. So not going there yet. What did you take note of here?
Some pace stuff. The 49ers ranked 3rd this week in non-garbage time seconds per play. This was their first top 10 week of the season. It's up from an average of 25th over the past 3 games. So if they were to play faster, that would be very, very appealing to me. Again, it's 1 week, and I don't really think 1 week is enough, but pace, especially if you adjust for things, generally pretty stable week to week. You don't see a whole lot of huge shifts. So I think it was at least noteworthy that they played so fast this week. The Jets, I talked about this already, the 8th fastest team so far through week 8's games. And in 2 post-bye games, they've been top 10 in pace and were really slow before that. They also were the most pass-heavy team in non-garbage time situations this week. Not a whole lot of downfield work or any. I think you said he didn't. Mike White didn't have a single downfield target.
No. We threw it 14 times to Michael Carter and 8 to Ty Johnson.
Yeah. So, but if they're going to play faster, this might be a team that we can at least look to for some weird bringbacks. And the Panthers ranked 9th in pace. It was their 2nd straight top 10 week after ranking 27th on average from weeks 2 through 6. So, these teams that are not primarily noteworthy, if they're going to play faster, that helps the games be better. Mm-hmm. So I at least want to target the Jets and Panthers and keep monitor their pace over the next week or so.
Yeah, that can boost guys who might otherwise be underwhelming to being viable for sure.
Yeah, and so
the
Panthers are going to play the Patriots, who they play fast and they throw the ball a ton. That game's going to rate out pretty well for me, and I'm probably going to overlook it. I kind of overlook the Chargers and Patriots because the Patriots just don't have a whole lot there. So it's probably going to be a good game, but I don't know if there's enough concentration and usage for that game for that to matter.
Damian Chubb. Let's go to the salary score here and start off at quarterback. Shout out with anything that you see. Again, what we do here is we go to the salaries, go position by position, scroll, and then shout out things that we see. I see Patrick Mahomes and Lamar Jackson at 85 and 82 or 83. Those are really good numbers for guys that good.
Yeah, so Mahomes...
games that good, sorry.
Yeah, Mahomes, I guess, short week against the Packers, who will have a extra prep time, which you don't love.
Yeah.
That's the kind of thing I'll notice on a Monday and then forget about by Sunday or Thursday. And then Lamar playing the Vikings, coming off of a bye for Lamar. So I like that.
Mm-hmm.
I would say Kyler at 82 if he's kind of full and it's not that bad of an injury. Yeah. That would be super relevant.
Yeah. Justin Herbert has had 2 bad games, but they came against the Ravens and the Patriots, 2 of the best defensive scheme teams in the league. Philadelphia Eagles will not be accused of having a great defensive scheme. I could see a situation where Herbert really resurges in a hurry in that game.
In a Herbie?
It's bad.
I know.
It's real bad. Taysom Hill 7,000 if he's able to get cleared and comes back.
Not a whole lot jumping out.
Why is touchdown Trevor 7,000? What happened here? That's a mistake, right?
I mean,
why did that happen?
It's rough whenever Baker Mayfield is at 6,600
and lower than touchdown Trevor. Yeah, I think the standouts to me are Lamar, Mahomes, and Herbert. Those are the ones that got my attention.
Yeah.
Because it's Vikings, Ravens for Lamar, and Packers, Chiefs for Mahomes. Both those really good games for stacking.
Yeah. Gardner Minshew's got like a mullet going on in his FanDuel photo. So do you think Aaron Rodgers at 8,100?
He's playable. I'll stack that game a lot. So yeah, for sure.
Okay, so my takeaway from quarterback is we're probably going to have to allocate salary this week.
Correct. To Devontae, to Tyreek, to Kelsey, maybe.
Well, allocate salary to quarterback because, you know, we have Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson, potentially Kyler Murray, Aaron Rodgers, Jalen Hurts, Justin Herbert. Odds are some of those guys are going to go off. So building around a value quarterback is banking on a lot of those players just busting, which is tough something I would have done years ago, but probably not now.
Tough bet. Let's go to your running back. Again, Kamara really high at 94. I think I also think Eckler's kind of high at 9,000. His role is better this past week, though. But
Aaron Jones, I think 85. We're going to love that game. It's coming off 11 targets, but that's a bit inflated with all their absences. So I'm going to have some nightmares about Aaron Jones FOMO.
Depending on Saquon's practice status, he's $7,500 facing the Raiders. I would need to get a full practice by Friday and to feel good about him. But that's noteworthy, I think.
Yeah, I would say that too.
Damian Harris is a lot better player than a lot of guys in his salary range.
Okay, so this past week, we talked a lot about backs in the 7,000 range.
Mm-hmm.
This week, we probably won't. We have nobody above 76. So no one between 76 and 79. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 backs even in that range, which is not that many. And I don't know anyone other than Saquon I would love.
Yeah. Devontae Booker 63 as Saquon can't go, but he's such a jag.
So we're kind of looking so far at needing salary at quarterback and potentially at running back.
Mm-hmm. I do think Damien Harris is in play as a value option, which I don't typically say. I think that Zack Moss works at 6,000.
This is I think Myles Gaskin at this point gets bumped up because not a whole lot's
What's his salary?
61.
Okay, that's a little high.
It is, but I mean, we're not going to love a lot of 7,000 backs.
Yeah.
And who in the 6,000 range, aside from Harris, do you see yourself playing?
Zack Moss is 6,000. I'll play him.
So I meant so we got 2 guys there.
Yeah.
And one's at the very, very low end of that. So I think by default, Gaskin's going to get some eyes from me.
Yeah. Okay. That's fair. Not in on either of the Arizona guys. So not of there. Not in on Jordan Howard. Boston Scott is 63. I don't see enough there to get super jazzed about him. I think it's pretty tough.
Running back's kind of bad.
It's kind of bad, indeed.
Kamara's oversalaried. Eckler's a little bit oversalaried.
Dowell's fine. But
Dowell's
it's a tough matchup.
Aaron Jones is oversalaried, I think, to me.
Yeah, it's tough. It's a tough one for sure. Mixon at 74 can be okay.
Yeah, I saw that one.
I can live with that.
He might end up being like a love for me this week.
Would not be shocked. Let's go to wide receiver. What you see in there?
Okay, so
the best wide receiver in 49ers franchise history is 8,000.
Yeah, we got three guys above 8 at or above 8,000. Deebo's 8,000, Tyreek Hill 8,500, and Devontae 9,000. So assuming Devontae's good to go, the Devontae Tyreek stack is going to be really hard to get to, but boy, it should probably be pretty different.
Targets.
It should most people are going to get to one of them.
Yeah, I want both. I think both would be pretty sick. So like that increases the allure of Gaskin. It increases the allure of
Yeah.
Harris. It increases the allure of Zack Moss.
Yeah.
I think I would say the high salaried receivers, specifically those two, Tyreek and Devontae, are a higher priority for me than the high salaried running backs as of right now. Do you agree?
I do, and we'll have to look a little bit more at wide receiver now, but it's
Receiver in the
possible
flex
it's
week.
a receiver flex week.
Yep, I agree. I think that's very on the table. Okay, scrolling down a bit more here. Big Mike Williams is 73. Not bad for his usage and the fact that, again, he's facing a weird defense. That's kind of strange.
I do like
Amari,
the DJ
69.
Moore's. I like the DJ Moore's salary is down.
Yeah.
Brandon Cooks. Wow.
Oh, that's the ghost revenge game though. Sam Darnold against Belichick defense, so hard to avoid. Actually, might be PJ Walker. Who knows? Okay.
Manny's still 65.
Yeah, he didn't catch any balls, but like Josh Allen overthrew him on one where he got open behind the defense. Just floating that out there. I'm gonna let that simmer for a little bit. Devontae's 62 again. I think that's fine.
I think Parker and Waddle in the 6,000 range are relevant, but other than that, like I
could talk myself into Jarvis Landry 59, given the volume.
Can we just stick in the 6,000 range again, real quick?
Sure.
It's Parker, Waddle at the very low end of that, and nobody else seems like they would be someone I would like build around, aside from maybe Amari.
Yeah, I think I'd put Amari in that bucket too. But
so we're looking at a week where like not a whole lot in the 6,000 range.
Stars and scrubs at receiver, I think, is what it'll be.
But are there going to be any scrubs? We'll find out here in the 5,000.
The market share bandit Jerry Jeudy is $5,800.
Jarv and Judy. Kadarius Toney 57, depending on. I'm gonna write that one down.
Oh no!
What?
Oh no! No. Okay, I talked myself out of it. I'm not gonna say it. I talked myself out of it. Pretend it never happened. Pretend it never happened.
Was it Kendrick Bourne?
Nope. Absolutely not. Absolutely not.
He's your guy.
He's not. It was very much not my guy who I considered mentioning in this salary scroll and did not. I almost mentioned Hunter Renfro's 56. I decided against it.
I thought it might have been him. OBJ's 55, and that's like not even.
Yeah, I'm not tempted. Mecole Hardman's 54. Rashad Bateman's 54. Ooh. We found one. Yay.
Wait. Are you like not as high on Kadarius Toney? I know we got to see him play tonight, but.
Oh, yeah, I'm fine with him. What is he?
57.
Oh, that's fine. Yeah.
I think assuming like they basically came out and said like, yeah, once he got hurt, like we didn't have to do because he's going to be our offense.
Okay, so Kadarius Toney and Rashad Bateman. I think Rashad Bateman.
Rondale Moore 53. So if Hopkins were
to
miss,
Marquez Valdes-Scantling's 53, which makes the game stacks easier because he can offset the Mahomes Tyreek salaries a bit. I'd rather get to Devontae, obviously, but like that helps. Oh, 12 target Jamal Agnew 52.
Yeah, like Zacchaeus is not going to tempt me.
Nope. The two games with no Ridley, he has 20 and 12 yards.
Michael Gallup is 5,000 if he were to come back and play.
Dang. He was at practice this week, so that's good.
I mean, we do get a lot of value with the Packers receivers. They're salaried as if everyone's coming back.
Yeah. So
like Equanimous St. Brown 49, Juwan Winfrey.
I think it's just Marquez Valdes-Scantling.
But I'm saying like they're down there in case like someone can't return.
Yeah, no, you're right. You're right. I think that the two write downs for me were Toney and Bateman.
Toney Bateman, and then conditionals on Rondale, MVS, and Gallup, I would say.
Agreed. Tight end, you ready?
Yeah.
Okay. So we get all the big guys back.
The big boys. And Darren Waller, too.
Rude. Seeing those guys being back and seeing Pitts against New Orleans, I think that's enough where I'm okay missing out on Pitts this week.
Yeah, probably cross off Pitts.
Cross off Gesicki for sure.
Gesicki. Goddard would still be in play.
Kittle's 6,000. If he comes back, he's not like. Oh, I thought they were bye this week. No, they're not. Okay.
No,
anyway, whatever. I don't know. I keep forgetting who's up bye. Zach Ertz is 55. He has 5 and 4 targets his first 2 games, but good yardage upside, which is weird for Zach Ertz. I don't hate that. I think I've made worse plays.
Yeah. CJ Travis Kelce Uzama is 54.
Tyler Conklin's 52. He's had 71 and 57 yards the past 2 games. That's pretty good for a tight end for $5,200 in a good game.
Dan Arnold's there, 51. I know. So we actually have a lot of tight end value.
Potential value. Yeah.
Potential. Well, more. We have guys with cases to be made.
Yeah.
And we need salary for quarterback, probably for running back, because we're going to have to overpay for some guys, I think, if we want to play them.
Yeah.
So it might be a week where, it's like, I'm going to be a little bit underweight on Travis Kelce, which feels scary, but if not, I'm underweight on like the stud quarterbacks or like Tyreek and Devontae, assuming he's good. So like,
yeah,
decisions to be made at tight end, but it seems pretty deep at first glance.
Yeah, it does a little bit. Josiah DeGuara is 54. Again, I'm probably not chasing that for the Green Bay guys, but it's worth noting that he's down there. 44.
Okay.
Adam Troutboy is $4,400. He's not Troutman yet. He can get there eventually. But Troutboy is 44.
Tommy Sweeney's 47.
Tommy Make the Defense Tremble is $4,500. His role is getting better, but it's not high enough where I would actually use him yet. I keep my eye on him, but I haven't seen enough yet. I think the standout down there, the guy I like most in the low salary range is Conklin at 52.
I'd probably say the same.
Ertz is interesting at 55, though.
Yeah, within that game. Well, that's dependent on Kyler too. If Kyler comes into this week like really banged up, I would be
correct.
Not very high on.
I would not use Zach Ertz. I would not use. I would never consider Zach Ertz then.
Yeah.
So we'll see how that shakes out. Okay. Note to future me, Brandon. After looking through the Week 9 salaries, after checking out injuries and usage, what is standing out to you as of right now? What do you want to keep in mind for Thursday?
Probably ranking the importance of the studs. Really go through and think about what my lineups look like. Because we build around running backs, you and I both, almost always. Think about how I'm going to feel at like 10 after 1 when lineups lock. And I'm like, well, I played a lot of like Austin Eckler, but it came at the expense of Devontae Adams and Tyreek Hill.
Yep.
Even though I don't love a lot of the value running backs, like that's going to be scary. So
I think that's my note to future me is consider a receiver in the flex this week, because if you're looking at the 5,000 range flex players, I'd rank both Kadarius Toney and Rashad Bateman above any running back in that range.
Yeah.
And if it means I have to use both of them in order to get to a Tyreek Devontae stack, happily. So I think this week, running back or wide receiver in the flex is the most tempting it's been the entire year so far, to me, at least.
Most likely, yeah.
Yeah.
So I agree there.
So we'll see how things shake out, and we'll get you set for that on Thursday. You can get that by subscribing to the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. Wherever you get your podcast, we, of course, have NBA and NHL podcasts via Tom Vecchio, UFC via Austin Swaim. We've got PGA coming up tomorrow for the Mayakoba, I believe, correct?
Yep.
Alrighty.
The worldwide, 2 words, technology. So we're going to talk about wide technology.
Wide technology at Mayakoba. That'll be tomorrow, 10 a.m. on the FanDuel YouTube page, up on the numberFire Daily Fantasy Podcast feed. After that, Brandon, if people have questions for you on Twitter, where can they find you there?
I'm at Godula13, GDULA13.
And I'm at Jim Sannes, JIMSANNES. You can also follow the FanDuel Podcast Network at FanDuel Podcast. Big thank you to everyone for tuning in for today. Good luck to you with your Monday night lineups. We'll talk to you once again on Thursday to get you set for week number 9. This has been the Heat Check Fantasy Podcast, powered by numberFire.